Hi, everyone. I'm Paula Harvey of Tejon Ranch Conservancy. Welcome back for our next nature journaling lesson. Today, we are going to continue working on generating interesting questions for our inquiry unit in nature journaling. Let's get started. So today's lesson is called Questioning Questions. When you had your journal today, that will be the title of this particular lesson. In this, what we're going to be doing is, just like always, observing something that we find mysterious and interesting in nature, but we're going to focus today on asking questions, and not just any questions, but we're really going to pay attention to varying the questions that we ask. The more varied your questions are, the more information in your observations you're going to start gaining. We're going to be approaching the observations that we're making from a variety of different aspects. And that's what this is all about today. We're going to continue to develop curiosity. We're going to continue to think about generating question after question after question as we are studying our interesting subject or our mystery. So the procedure will be like this. We're going to start out just like we do any nature journaling activity with our ABCs or 1, 2, 3s and our picture or a diagram or a sketch. We're going to leave space around this picture. So what we're going to do is put the picture in the middle of the paper and then use the space around it for our question generation. Now, what we are going to do is a question generator. Sounds like a machine, and it is not really a machine so much as just a guide for helping you to come up with that variety of questions. There are several different kinds of question generators you can use. You, in fact, have been using a question generator throughout our entire nature journaling unit. We've talked many times about the NGSS, the Next Generation Science Standards, cross-cutting concepts. You remember them like cause and effect and systems and system models and compare and contrast and patterns, those type of things. Those actually help to guide us in asking the right kinds of questions. But today we're going to do a very simple question generator, simply asking who, what, when, how, where, why questions. And we're going to ask as many as possible just to get into the swing of things. What's really interesting is for all the different kinds of question generators that there may be, they have an overlapping quality to them. So when we do the simple who, what, where, when, why, and how questions, we are going to be touching a little bit upon those next generation cross-cutting concepts. I will point that out as we go so you'll be aware of that. So you're going to start asking questions about your phenomenon. And then if you get curious about something else while you are doing that, you can shift and your focus to that other thing. This isn't so rigid that you were stuck in a subject. And this is something we've talked about in the past as well, when we've talked about following the question. So you have a question and you look for evidence to help you come up with an answer, which actually generates more questions, and on and on and on. And it's going to be the same way with this. You start looking at some phenomenon, and it might be that a question generates that you have generated, and it brings you to some other interesting thing, and you want to study that further. That's exactly what nature journaling is about. So let's talk about setting up your journal. And while I'm talking, you can start setting up your heading, that metadata, which includes the day, the date, the time, the season, your location, the habitat, the temperature, the wind miles per hour, and the cloud cover, percentage of cloud cover. Then find something that's interesting to you and plan to sketch that thing as you're observing it. Put it right in the middle of your paper. Leave all this space around here for all of the writing work that we're about to do. So the first of the writing work, ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, and of course, you've already done the sketch. So starting with ABCs, I notice, I wonder, this reminds me of. The 1, 2, 3s are those metrics, the measurements. How tall is it? How big is it? How much does it weigh? How far away is it? Those kinds of things. And then obviously, again, that sketch or diagram. But one of the things I wanted to remind you is if it is a diagram, remember that you have to label it with different parts. Now, once you've done that, the next thing is to put in that question generator. So on the left side of your drawing, you're going to write who, what, when, where, how, and why. And when you do it, leave space so that your sentence starter is who, and you can continue writing through it, and what, and continue writing through it, and so on and so forth. Now, when you do this, this is going to help you direct that thinking to just exactly the varying ways to approach a particular subject. So let's talk a little bit about those words. What do they mean? Who and what, those are the words we use all the time. This is actually what we're trying to do is, okay, yeah, you can do a who question and a what question, but let's move on to some other aspects of your journaling. So who and what, they're questions of identification. What is that phenomenon? What is that species? And what is that process that we're looking at? Questions like who left these tracks? What happened here? Those are the kinds of simple questions we're asking. But we want to move beyond the who and what. So let's talk a little bit about when and where. These questions get us thinking about space and location and timing. So when and where, when things have happened or will happen, where things have happened or will happen, or the significance of where things are in relationship to one another. Examples, when did the sapling sprout? Where did the seed come from? And then the how and why. These questions focus on figuring out how things work, and they also look at cause and effect. Notice these words, cause and effect. That's an NGSS cross-cutting concept. So you'll see that we are now in that realm that we are overlapping into other types of question generators. And once you get really comfortable with this, use those cross-cutting concepts. Don't forget about them. They're vital to thinking scientifically. So what are some examples of how and why questions? Why are there holes on only one side of a leaf? And how do those spikes on the leaf help it to survive? Much more interesting questions. Now, once you have done that, you're going to fill in that question generator. Now, something I want you to notice that even though I've got who, what, when, where, how, and why, I came up with another where question, and I just kind of added it there. I did that simply because I'd already put those question marks in. I could have continued all along down here. I could have probably continued all the way across and just asked question after question after question. But at the very least, I've asked one who, what, when, where, how, and why question, just to make sure I'm really varying the quality and the type of question, and in which case I'm able to approach the study of my subject. If, as you're writing these, you start getting stuck and can't come up with a question, go back to those ABCs that I wonder, and then say to yourself, I wonder, and see what pops out. You've been doing I wonder questions since the very beginning, so you should be very, very comfortable with that. Once you've done that I wonder question, take a look at the quality of that question. Is it again stuck with a who and what, or have you moved beyond that? Now, don't worry about being really rigid with these questions. In the sample that I gave you, I was very rigid because I wanted to show you at the very basics what it should look like. But you can ask questions that do not start with those words. You just want to be really conscious of the variety of questions so that you make sure that you're covering all of your bases. At this point, you're not worrying about answers. Remember, this is just about generating questions. And that's very liberating. It's freeing to you. You don't have to worry about only asking questions that you can find the answers to. Just go wild and ask as many questions as you want. Once you're done with those questions, let's go back to what we did last time with that language of uncertainty and coming up with some hypotheses, some possibilities for why things are the way they are, for trying to come up with approaches for answering those questions. Again, this isn't about answering questions. This is about asking those questions. And so we want to use that language of uncertainty, starting your sentences with maybe, possibly, perhaps, could it be, which gives you permission to be wrong. We aren't worrying about the right answer. And remember also, when you use these words to start a sentence, that you're also using evidence to help you come up with some of the answers to your questions. All right. So you have several different explanations for each of your questions, and how you set that up on your paper is completely up to you. So one of the ways you can do it is write who on one side here, and then on the other side, you could write maybe and come up with an answer. Here's what, and you could write on the other side your possible answer, your hypothesis, and so on and so forth. So you could write directly across, or you could write answers all over this paper and just draw lines from one to another. Or you can do it the way I did it, which is, and it wasn't that I did it, this is my favorite way. It's that once I wrote those questions, I decided I want to come up with some possible answers, some possible hypotheses. And so I want to write these answers down. What would they be? So here I went down here and I wrote my what and my when and how and why and where and so on. And as I did this, I also wrote perhaps, could it be, possibly, perhaps, maybe. I was remembering that these are extremely important words. And so I highlighted the what's and who's and when's here and here so that they match up. And then I put a little note to myself to remind myself to start my start my answers with these words of uncertainty. And then I underline those to show me that I am sticking with that mindset of that language of uncertainty. So a lot of what I do in my journaling here, up here, you'll see I boxed in 15 centimeters tall and 30 feet away. This is all to show me and remind me that I've done my 1, 2, 3s. All right. And so a lot of this boxing that I do just helps me. Maybe it's to make it stand out, or maybe it's just to show me, yes, I've done what I was expecting of myself. And that's it. Go out, start asking questions, practice using that question generator, who, what, where, when, how, and why, and have fun. It's a beautiful day. Every day is a beautiful day for making discoveries. Enjoy yourself, and I'll see you for the next lesson. Bye for now.